Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here with Shadow Streak, and we are here to talk about some of the worst episodes in the original Powerpuff Girls series, and we wanted to kind of look at some of the big flaws in those episodes and compare them to the reboot, the Powerpuff Girls 2016.
Hello, everyone. It's me, Shadow Streak. Pleasure to be here. Basically, I make reviews on the Powerpuff Girls 2016. I do it episode by episode, so I'm currently going through season 2. And I also do other videos on the side here and there. Like occasionally, I'll do a first impressions video on like Craig of the Creek. I did one on Final Space and a few others, and maybe another random episode review here and there if I feel like it. But I'm most known for my Powerpuff videos.
And I mean, you're notable in that you're one of the few people I think that is actually like continuing to look at the show. You're not just like, I don't know, presenting the same generic topics to hate on or whatever. You're actually following the show, and you're the most you are the most educated person on the Powerpuff Girls reboot that exists in the world.
Oh, thank you.
I feel confident saying that. I'm sorry, people who make the show.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
All right, so we picked 3 episodes here, or you picked 2 episodes and I picked 1 episode, basically, that we think are some of the worst, not necessarily like the worst, but just kind of some that popped into our head that have some pretty obvious, pretty easy flaws. They're all from the 5th and 6th season of the original show, and I mean, I make no secret that I have severe problems with both of those seasons. There's some gems in there, but I do think that those seasons are ones that you could fairly compare the reboot to. I think that's a comparison that the reboot might win out in some aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a completely fair statement to make because, like, again, there are some good episodes in the later seasons, but I totally agree that they are the weakest part of the original run. And I'm even willing to go out and say that there are reboot episodes that are better than some of the worst of seasons 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think if we had gotten a straight continuation, like if there was a season 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever, and the show was just still running today, I think we'd have a lot more of like a SpongeBob situation where there's huge fluctuations. And I don't know that, like, if the show had remained what it was, we probably would have ended up with something somewhat similar to the current Powerpuff Girls reboot, although I'm sure different in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the first episode we wanted to look at, and this is not in chronological order, we just going kind of random here, but the first episode is Say Uncle, which, if you don't recall, it's an episode where the professor has a brother who we've never heard about before.
Yep, he's never brought up before this moment.
Watch that be something they bring back in the reboot.
Oh dear.
we can't give you like fan favorite villains, but here's the professor's
Here's his brother, the character everyone loves.
But yes, the professor has a brother, and he tells the girls to pick him up at a train station, and he shows them a picture, and the defining characteristic is that this guy is, like, slightly hairy, and the professor says that he's wild, so, of course, the Powerpuff Girls end up picking up Bigfoot, or a Bigfoot, and he proceeds to be crazy. The Powerpuff Girls never meet their actual uncle, and then they send him on his way.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the entire episode right there. You know?
Yes.
It's very simple in concept. It's
yeah.
There's not much depth to it. It's not like this is an episode where you're looking for any deeper meaning. And that's not necessarily what brings the episode down, but it's nothing extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, if you were to sit down and describe or look at, like, descriptions on Wikipedia of Powerpuff Girls episodes, of the old series, of the reboot, of Dance Pants, of whatever, a lot of them kind of follow in the same, like, just kind of like insanity. Like, if you were just to read the description, that's not necessarily an indication of the quality of the episode. A lot of it sounds stupid, or like a lot of the description of this episode sounds like something that would have happened in the first season of the show or the second season of the show. It's a lot in the execution that really makes it not very good.
Right.
The biggest thing that I have against this episode, and this is like, I think the defining characteristic of seasons 5 and 6 of the Powerpuff Girls, it's slow. It is so bizarrely, ungodly slow in every single aspect. Okay, first of all, there's pauses after the jokes. Like they literally pause as if it's a laugh track. Like there's a guy that goes on and on about his taffy, and like after he makes a joke about his taffy, he looks at the camera directly. Like it's a
Mhm.
bad day to bring taffy in. Wah. Like it's but it happens after so many gags. Like there's one where they're like Blossom's like, "Well, we can't tie the guy up. He's our uncle." And then it cuts to the exterior of the Powerpuff Girls house. Blossom's like, "I said we can't tie him up." And it's so stilted and stiff, and there's a pause after it.
Yeah.
You notice this too, right? I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
crazy
you're
here.
not crazy. That's completely true, and I agree with you there. And like that's another thing that I do want to point out is when it comes to the dialogue, it's very redundant in like the things the characters
Yes.
say. Like the narrator opens up by saying something along the lines of like, it's a very big day, and then right after that, the professor says, "Hey, girls, today's a big day." It's like, well, the narrator just said that. We know that
Yeah.
already.
This isn't like Arrested Development. That wasn't like some sort of weird meta gag.
And like the same is said with like the telegram scenes. Like, here's a telegram for Professor Utonium. A telegram, that's right, an important telegram. And then they repeat the exact same thing to the professor. And it
Yeah.
feels like padding. It's kind of like it's done to fill up time.
It's almost like cringe comedy, I would say.
In a
Almost.
way, in the way it's delivered, I would agree.
Like okay, so the Sasquatch guy loves taffy. And of course this is the day that everyone in Townsville is in love with this famous Townsville taffy.
Hmm.
And like so what's going to happen when taffy shows up, but the show always makes like a big like the professor's like, "Hey, would you like some taffy?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I picked a bad day to pack taffy for lunch." Like it's just
Hmm.
always I don't know. It's awkward. It's really awkward, and it's not just the dialogue either. Like the story itself, it just there's the telegram. It cuts back to the uncle on the train station for no reason. The Powerpuff Girls never meet him. He doesn't do anything. It cuts back to him in the middle of the episode just to remind us, I guess, as if we could forget that they're not really their uncle. Like I wonder if is that the reason? Like, do they think we're that stupid?
Because I noticed the way it was edited in is the girls are at school and they're doing show and tell, and the one girl is showing off her assortment of taffy. How convenient.
Of course.
And then it cuts back to the uncle who's like just looking around the train station, and then it cuts back to the giant hairy monster chasing the kids out of the school. And it's like, all they needed to do was show like the monster, looking at the taffy, and then just cut back to the school, wait like 3 seconds of silence, and then have them burst through the door like normal. You would not need
Yep.
that uncle scene at all.
And I also should say that the movement, like just the animation itself, is so slow.
It is.
It's.
It is.
I mean, the Powerpuff Girls was originally known for being so fast and interesting and entertaining and so much action. And I mean, we'll get to the action and fight scenes, but the just like I don't know, the Powerpuff Girls walk in this episode, and it's just slow.
Oh yeah. Anytime they walk, it's slow because they have such stubby little legs. Like
Yep.
they
Yep.
were not designed to walk.
Okay, so this slow problem. Do you think that this is something that the new show, that the reboot has? Personally, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the new show is not very fast paced, but this sort of like slowness is this just weird quirk of some of the episodes in the later two seasons of the original show. I think A, this must have been someone's style of comedy, and B, it seems like they just couldn't adjust to the new animation style, because season 4 kind of had some episodes that were in this newer digitally inked I don't know all that was different about how they animated it. Maybe the budget was less. I don't know. But for some reason, it just seemed like they couldn't get a grasp on how to make the timing on things fast.
The key difference that I know between like the reboot and this and these kinds of episodes from season 5 and 6, a lot of the season 5 and 6 episodes, like, yes, the Powerpuff Girls overall, when it comes to their like kind of premises for episodes, are simple, but some of the worst are when they're like too simple. And this is a case of where it's like it's too simple in the sense that there isn't enough material to fill up 11 minutes.
Yes.
So it feels dragged out because they're trying to fill that time. The reboot, a lot of the time, it's actually the opposite problem, where it's trying to do too much in 11 minutes. where they have a lot of ideas and a lot of different things, and it's like it's not that the episode moves too fast, but it's just that there's too much introduced and it feels cramped.
We're not talking about any specific reboot episode, but just for the sake of this, because we're talking about it as a whole, I did watch a few episodes from season 3. I saw an episode where the Powerpuff Girls have to be the bodyguard to Mojo, and I saw an episode called Blossom 3. It's supposed to be Blossom Cubed, but the Cartoon Network titling people don't know that. And that episode has a cool premise of like Blossom is cloned, but yeah, it does feel like, it feels like when the reboot does have good ideas, it almost, yeah, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't do enough with them, or it feels like they want to do something, but the episode just has to end.
Yeah.
Like at the end of that episode, there's still the 2 Blossoms, and there's actually an interesting joke about Buttercup says she's going to grab the shovel, which has got to be like the only example of dark humor in the reboot. And they're just like, no, we're going to go focus group away and whatever. And it's just like, oh, I mean, there's just these 2 clones of Blossoms out there, I guess.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I've noticed, and I've picked up on that. I've picked up on this after seeing so many episodes. Is the reboot loves to use montage a lot, like way more than the average show. It uses montage out the wazoo, and I think a lot of that is because they want to progress to a certain point to get to their point, but because there's only 11 minutes, they can't fill in all of what they want to do, so they have to like speed through a bunch of stuff with a montage to get to where they want to get. And that's kind of what I mean when I say it doesn't have enough time to flesh out its ideas, which is why they kind of touch upon it really fast. And there's a lot of things that it's like it's brought up and kind of like touched and then moved on from immediately.
And a lot of times, I mean, montage can be used to great effect in cartoons, of course. Pretty much every animated show has used montage at some point, just because it's a very effective way, especially if you have a short time period. It's a very effective way to get some ideas across. But a lot of times you got to be careful with it because you don't want to be skipping through what is ultimately the interesting parts of the episode. It's not always, it's the journey, not the destination in a lot of cases. And yeah, I don't think Say Uncle has a montage. I don't believe. No. But it does go through a lot of scenarios kind of quickly. Like I don't know, going back to Say Uncle, I guess just you had a great point about it being very simple. And here's the thing. The girls never realize that the professor never realizes that this isn't his brother somehow, inexplicably.
Yeah.
And so there's not a conflict. The conflict is that he's acting out of control, but we know the Powerpuff Girls can put him down easily. We don't see this, and we'll get to that in a second, but we know they can stop him. So the conflict isn't that he's really like causing too much trouble even. That's kind of the conflict. The conflict isn't that they're not sure what's going on. I mean, they kind of question it, but they're not picking up the pieces. Like, it's not a mystery. No. It's not like, and we, the audience, know what's up. So it's not a mystery to us. So there's no conflict. I don't think. The conflict is just, there's a monster around Townsville. Oh, wow. Gee, great. I've never seen that. Like,
yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like the only conflict is that he's causing problems for other people, but then the girls, even still, it's not really like there's an epic fight scene between the girls and their quote uncle. Clever segue right there. And like the thing is the only thing that even resembles a fight in this episode is when the uncle gets to the taffy fair, and it's like, first of all, how convenient that there's a taffy fair on that specific day.
Okay, wait, hang on, just to segue for a second. The taffy thing is not important to the episode. It could have been just a raging monster. It literally doesn't mean anything. It's just an excuse for him to act kind of behaved sometimes, I guess. Story-wise, there's no reason for it. It's not even a good joke. They don't even do good humor. It's just everyone just inexplicably has taffy.
Yeah, because it's like, so the guard conveniently started an all taffy diet, and then he gets off the train and Bubbles happens to have taffy, and then they go to school and there's taffy for show and tell, and then they go to the fair and there's taffy there, and then the professor comes home and he has taffy too. It's like there's taffy everywhere.
And the only time it's a joke is the all taffy diet too.
Exactly.
The rest of the times it's just characters having taffy. Okay, so anyway, back to the point you were saying about how the only real fight scene was at the Taffy Fair.
Yeah, and it's completely off screen. Like,
Yep.
it just cuts to the girls at home with the uncle slightly beat up, and they're like, "Thanks for taking him out, Buttercup, even though he's our uncle," or something like along those lines. And it's like,
No,
well,
it's. I said we couldn't tie him up,
oh yeah,
but bomb.
and it's like you couldn't have at least shown like 3 or 4 punches and kicks with some flashes, and then cut home.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean, this is
I feel like it would have been perfectly fine if they had just shown Buttercup going straight at him, shown a few kicks, and then her kick towards the screen, flash to white, and then kind of fade back in. And I feel like that would have been perfectly fine.
So yeah, there is like essentially 2 quote unquote fight scenes in this. The second one, the one that's off screen, literally all off screen.
Yeah.
The second one is when they get him out of the house at the end,
Right.
but it's like a one punch fight scene.
I wouldn't even call it a fight scene. I would call it a fight shot because it's one shot.
So I mean, this right here is the obvious comparison we can make to the newer show because I mean, it's not even okay. Here's the thing: there's episodes of the original show that aren't about fighting at all. There's the Rain Day Adventure. That's the most obvious example I can pull. But the episode doesn't pretend like it is an action episode. This episode and the reboot, in a lot of episodes of the reboot, still acts as if there is fighting in it, or as if this is still an action show, but but doesn't show it. Rarely shows it. I have a great example in the season 3 episode Blossom 3. So that episode actually has a little bit more fighting than most of the episodes of the reboot. Season 3 does seem to have picked up a little bit, but there is a part of that episode where Buttercup and Bubbles are talking. The 3 of them see a monster, and Blossom has been cloned twice. There's 2 clones and 1 Blossom. And they see a monster, and Bubbles and Buttercup are like, "Oh man, we're gonna beat up that monster. Yeah, it's gonna be an epic fight scene. We're gonna kill that monster." Blah blah blah. Like they hype it up. And then the monster's defeated by the 3 Blossoms off screen. And it's a joke. To be fair, it's a joke. But because that happens so often on the reboot, I noticed this in another episode too. I can't place it, but correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't this happen in many episodes where they're like adjacent to a fight scene? Like you think they're going to do a fight scene or whatever, and instead they'll do one punch, or instead, something else will happen. The fight scene will get disrupted in some way.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that. Yeah. Or like another thing is like they will go down and they will go towards the villain, they'll get knocked down in one hit, and then another character will come in and save them. That's another common theme. Like the girls get saved more than doing the saving, it feels like, especially in season 1.
And yeah, I mean that's Say Uncle too. There is action in this episode, we just don't see it.
Yeah.
And that's stupid. That's really dumb. I mean, especially the joke they use for it is just the worst joke. It's a Gilligan cut that's done wrong. It's not even a Gilligan cut because Blossoms explains the joke before we even see him beat up. It's the dumbest thing. But yeah, I mean it's just kind of interesting that this episode does have that thread line with the reboot.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Say Uncle, the last thing is just this misunderstanding. Okay. There's a lot of stupid things that happen in the Powerpuff Girls original show. There's a lot of stupid misunderstandings. But this is I don't know, probably the dumbest. They literally think the monster is this guy just because A, they both have a unibrow, and B, the professor says he's wild. That's it. Otherwise, he just acts like a crazy monster.
Yeah, and what gets me even more is the fact that, like, the professor himself believes that it's his brother when the professor knows what he looks like. And it's like,
yes.
I mean, yeah, he makes a comment. It's like, wow, he let his hair grow out. But, like, really, like, you still don't realize that that's not him and that's some creature. Like, there's a point where the suspension of disbelief, you can't do it, and it's like, this is too absurd to believe that the characters would actually think this is their uncle.
Like, okay, you know what? Here's just a fix off the top of my head. Just one thing that could make this more believable and interesting. It doesn't have to be 100% believable, of course, but their uncle loves taffy. The professor says that at the beginning of the episode. Oh man, what that guy wouldn't do for some taffy. There you go. There's a thread line that the Powerpuff Girls what the comedy comes from, they think that the professor maybe was kidding or exaggerating, and
Yeah.
there we go. This wild monster is insane for taffy. Boom. That's what makes these misunderstandings fun. It's not that it's
Mm-hmm.
look, okay, there's more unbelievable things in the show, but
There
like
is.
it's the level, it's between the fact that it is just a high level of stupidity needed for this story to work, and the fact that they don't do anything with it. The fact that it's just another example of this. And I mean, there's episodes similar to this in the rest of the show where they're trying to hide something from the professor, or where there's just this misunderstanding going on, or like, the where professor dates the cat in an episode.
Yeah.
But anyway, point being, they do misunderstandings like this, and it works because it's funny, and because they put more effort into the misunderstanding. It isn't just like, wow, they share one trait, even though everything else is different.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I don't know if this is something that happens frequently in the reboot. You'll have to tell me. But here's the thing: the professor being stupid is, I mean, that you don't have to tell me. I know that in the reboot.
Yeah. It happens way more than it needs to,
Yes,
to say the
in
least.
in like 2 of the 3 episodes I watched directly before this to prepare for it, the professor comes in for one dumb line, like, "Oh, well, as long as I have a prime number of kids, I'm okay." And then he says that in Blossom 3, and then in Not So Secret Service, it's like it's weird because it's like the same sort of thing where Mojo is being protected by the Powerpuff Girls, and he's wearing a mustache, and he comes to live with them, and the professor's like, "Who's this gentleman?" And the Powerpuff Girls are like, "He's our cousin Johan." And the professor's like, "I don't recall that you have a cousin Johan. Why didn't you introduce me?" And it's like, you made them. You're their father. And I mean, technically, they're not entirely wrong that Mojo's related to them, but he just exists in those episodes to spout the stupid, like,
Yeah.
just stupid.
Yeah, there's an even worse example of this in the reboot, and it's from the episode Green Wing. There's this part where the girls have kind of reconvened after they're doing their separate things, and Bubbles essentially like does her hair up to be spiky like Buttercup's, and she kind of like mocks her and does a voice and whatever. And the professor walks in on screen and says, "Oh, there you are, Buttercup. How are you enjoying your day?" to Bubbles, despite the fact that her blonde hair is right there. She's still in her completely blue outfit. Buttercup is right there on the floor in front of him, looking completely normal. And it's like, how this is worse than people confusing Shadow and Sonic in Sonic Adventure 2. Like, what is this?
Yeah, this sort of thing does not work when the character is always this stupid. When it's a surprise, it can work.
Yeah.
It can still be stupid, but it can also work and be funny. But when it's just like, yeah. And the professor in the original show definitely had his weird moments.
Mhm.
He was a straight man a lot of the time. He was. But he had weird moments, and he had dumb lines
Yeah,
here and there.
he did.
But I mean, Say Uncle really, like, just the level on which he doesn't recognize his brother, and that he exists in the episode just for not really any reason. And I feel like it's the same way with the reboot. That's like the exact same problem. And I mean, at least in the original, it didn't happen too often. That's all I can say. So comparing Say Uncle to just like some episodes of the reboot, I have to say, even some of the worst episodes of the reboot, I would probably rather watch, just because the awkwardness of the jokes and the pacing and the dialogue and just how cringy this episode is. I hate to use that word, but I would rather watch a really boring episode of the reboot than this, to be honest.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Because I mean, gosh, I could probably count the number of times I've watched this episode on one hand at this point. I think this might have been like the 4th or 5th time I've watched it, because it's like I love going back to the original series, and there are some season 5 and 6 episodes I do watch repeatedly, but this is one I always just click right past, and I'm like, nope, don't need to see this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I mean, on top of everything else, it's just not that original of a premise. I mean, in general, like even across TV in general, like this wacky swapped identity thing, it's a it goes back to like ancient plays. Like it's not yeah.
yeah, it's nothing we haven't seen before. All right, there is one other thing I'll add really quick, and it's the fact that in this episode there is a grammatical error when the professor is reading his letter from his uncle. or not from his uncle, from his brother, the girl's uncle. And it basically says he signs it with, your brother Eugene, but the your is the conjunction you are. So it's like you are brother Eugene. And that's something that, I pointed out because the reboot is very, very guilty of this. Like there's so
Really?
many spelling errors. I can't even begin to name them all.
On a professional
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. So there's Bubbles' cast, which says self-destruct mode instead of self-destruct. There's the scene in Fashion Forward where the girls are there's a montage, bringing that back. There's a montage of a bunch of Instagram posts, and the captions are all terribly formatted and misspelled. And it's like I even remember in some of the title cards where it says like storyboarded by, they spelled storyboarded wrong. So it says like storyboard. And it's like they forgot the D, so it's like storyboard, and it's like BORARED. I'm like, how do you miss that? Like,
They're trying to send you a message subliminally that they're bored.
I guess so at this point.
The story is boring. Yes, I agree.
Like that, I don't know. That was just a minor detail I found similar between this episode and the reboot.
And just, I guess, just one last thing. You put this in the notes, and this is actually a very good point. Just that for this misunderstanding to work, not just the professor has to be dumb, but Blossom does as well. And yeah, I mean, there's moments where I guess they have to make the girls dumb for whatever, just for the story to work. But
yeah,
I do find it suspicious that Blossom didn't, I don't know, I guess try harder to figure this out or something. Like, I don't know. It just, they could have done things. Like, here's the thing. You could replace the Powerpuff Girls in this episode with anyone, any other character. It could be SpongeBob. It could be Goku. Like, it could be anyone. And the story doesn't change.
I was going to say, like, what defines this as a Powerpuff Girls episode? Like, what makes this Powerpuff Girls and not any other show?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Nothing about the individual characters' characteristics even matter.
Yeah, it could be it could be applied to any cartoon out there. Like any cartoon could do something like this, and there are cartoons that probably have done it. I mean, I can't think of any all the top of my head, but I know there are plenty of cartoons out there that have done this and have probably done it a lot better.
Here's one question, I guess. We'll end with this question on each one of these.
Okay.
Could you see the reboot doing this episode? And how do you think the reboot would have handled it?
That is a good question.
I'll go first if you need time to think.
Okay, yeah, you can go ahead.
I think story-wise, definitely. Like this seems like the sort of let's not have fight scenes the new show would have. I mean, I feel like we'd have the Powerpuff Girls themselves fighting for some reason. They'd be Buttercup wouldn't want to give in to the Sasquatch, and Bubbles thinks like Blossom would feel like a duty to respect the elders or something, like, which is weird that I feel like the reboot would actually have more characterization on the girls, but I do think they probably would have, although I don't know that it would have been good because it would have been them just kind of annoyingly fighting. I mean, obviously I don't think it would have had the stilted dialogue. I think it would have been stilted dialogue in a different way. Oh no, you know what? I bet you if they had done it, there would have been like a hip hop sequence for the Sasquatch to dance or something. There you go. That's my take on that.
Dang it, you stole my idea. No, I'm kidding. No, I totally could see this. I mean, I could totally see the show doing it because the reboot goes for that more slice of life-y comedy aspect, and they could definitely easily replicate this premise. If they were to put their own spin on it, I could see it, maybe instead of the professor's brother, they could do it with Donnie's friend, or like,
oh no.
Yeah, I don't know why I feel like this would somehow be related to Donnie. Like maybe Donnie's even the one that confuses the person that's visiting.
Oh no.
I just have a feeling like this would work with him. As much as I don't want to see that, I just get the feeling that he would be the character that they somehow incorporate into the plot because he's just that oblivious.
Oh boy. All right, so we are going to move along to an episode that you picked entitled Sweet and Sour.
All right, yeah. So this episode is another infamous episode. in which I consider one of the worst, mostly because it is a prime example of mob mentality in a very negative way. The episode revolves around the girls being called in that there is a robbery going on, and it turns out that the criminals robbing the bank are these three adorable little critters. It's a puppy dog, a cat, and I believe it's supposed to be a bunny, although the bunny's design really doesn't make it look like much of a bunny.
It's
But
Jigglypuff.
yeah, it basically is Jigglypuff. But an interesting fun fact: all three of those villains are voiced by one of the girls' voice actresses.
I bet I can tell you which one.
Yep. But yeah, they're robbing the bank, and essentially they get away with their crimes because all of the townsfolk and citizens believe that because they're so cute and adorable, they're allowed to get away with it. You know, they won't let the girls lay a finger on them despite the fact that they're breaking the law, and they'll just, you know, here's some free money, here's some free jewelry, here's this, that, and the other thing, and they'll just give it away. And the critters are aware of their, you know, adorable, cute looks, and they take advantage of it, and they completely, you know, rig the system in their favor and make the girls really frustrated because they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's basically the whole premise until the end.
Describing it sounds like something this show would have done at any point in the series. It doesn't, nothing about really the description in and of itself explains kind of what's wrong with this episode. And I guess the thing is, when you do episodes like this of any show, and SpongeBob is one that gets this a lot, when you have the town being just this angry mob, it's always tough because you don't want the audience to. I mean, this is basically an idiot ball episode. Like Say Uncle, this is an episode where the town itself is just completely stupid and angry at the Powerpuff Girls, despite the Powerpuff Girls being right, which happens in a number of episodes. This is a very recurring thing. There's an episode where the girls just get fed up with the town and tell them to solve their own problems.
Yeah.
And I mean, can you really blame the girls for hating the town after the movie? Okay, the problem is that when you have these mom mentality episodes, if you're not careful with it, and you don't even have like the mob apologize at the end, it just comes off as just a really brutal episode. I don't want to use the term, but I'll say it. It's mean-spirited. And the problem with this episode is that it has all of that harshness and mean-spirited nature, but none of the jokes and no complexity to it whatsoever. It is literally, these are cute things. We, the town, love the cute things. Powerpuff Girls can see right through it because this is like Boss Baby or something, and they're fighting with the... I don't know. And then the Powerpuff Girls are right in the end, and they solve the problem by having the town find them too cute.
Yeah, they basically punish the creatures by disguising their school as a bank, and then they walk in, and there's all these, like, you know, 6-year-old kids hugging them and touching them and pulling on them, and, you know, typical younger kid stuff. Think like the scene in Toy Story 3 where all the kids go in and kind of destroy the toys. Yeah, it's the same idea.
Don't think like that though, because that scene is great in Toy Story.
It is great. Yeah, that's the difference. But it's a similar idea.
This is kind of sort of the plot of, what is it, Golden Arches? The episode where there's an old man villain.
You're thinking of Fallen Arches.
Oh, yeah. Fallen Arches. Where there's an old man villain and they can't beat him up because he's too old, and so they need to find a clever solution. And that episode does come up with a clever solution. They get Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. So, but anyway, they did that. You know, they did that. Equal fights. The girls can't beat him up because of feminism. Like they've done this so many times in the show, and it's not even really. I'm not even mad that they're doing like this sort of thing again, because like cuteness weaponized is like right up the Powerpuff Girls alley, like in terms of a show. I'm just upset that they do this again, and they just don't. They don't play with it. They don't have comedy. They don't have fun with it. It's the exact story that you'd see and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating because it's like it succeeds in making the audience frustrated because, you know, the girls are getting frustrated, but it's not like that's not like a positive thing. Like this, as you say, this seems like it would be a premise that would be fun. It'd be something that would be very jokey considering, you know, the cute villains. They could totally do stuff with that. There's only one joke in this episode that I ever laugh at, and it's at the very beginning before it even really starts, where Bubbles is going through her dolls and she comes to this like hunchback thing and she's like, I think you're swell, and then just kind of hides him under the
Yes.
bed with this like 1,000-yard stare. And it's like,
Yes.
that's hilarious. But after that moment, you may as well turn the episode off because it just goes downhill.
Yeah, the hunchback joke is great because it's so subtle. Like
Yeah.
Bubbles says "I love you" to all of her other creatures,
Yeah.
and then she gets to that one, and then she just quietly tucks it under the bed, and then later Buttercup
Yep.
finds it, and she's like, "Oh, hey, that's mine."
And she hugs him, and it's like, oh, that's so cute.
Clever. That's clever,
Yep.
subtle humor, and it's also like you think that's going to be foreshadowing, but that's not how they solve the problem at
No.
all. You think maybe they're going to make the creatures ugly, or I mean, the whole thing with Quasimodo is that he has a heart of gold despite being ugly.
Mhm.
So you think maybe they can show the Townsville people that they're being. But anyway, comparing it back to the reboot, story-wise, like the story being like what you would see in a classic episode of the Powerpuff Girls, but without good humor and just kind of, I don't know, just frustration, and like it doesn't take it in an interesting direction. I think that's right up the reboot's alley.
Absolutely. I could totally see the reboot doing something like this.
Especially because it avoids fighting once again. Can't have fighting.
Of course, you know. That seems to be the common trend, even though it's kind of why they were made in the first place, but you know.
But to give it credit, and you can confirm this, this was true in the episodes that I saw, there is very, very little of like the Townsville citizens enacting mob behavior. Most of like the background characters that we get is their classmates, as far as I understand.
Yeah, there are a few exceptions. I do have one example that's probably the worst of it. It's in the episode Halt and Catch Silico. Basically, it's an episode where the girls have these lies, you know, printed online, and the townsfolk believe them, and they kind of, you know, get really mad at the girls for, you know, Buttercup has a toupee, and that gives them a reason to kind of chase them out of town. But other than that, and maybe like one or two other examples, it's not nearly as common of a thing as in the original.
And I think that's actually good, because I don't think that the mob mentality is a bad thing. It can be a very useful tool in an episode, especially because the mob is never a character. We don't really have to like the mob, so you can get away with making them meaner than usual.
Right.
But you got to be careful,
Yeah.
because you make them too mean, and then it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
But I do think, I think it's just very easily misused. So I think just the reboot kind of toning that back, it's a good thing. I think that's actually a positive. I'm kind of happy that they didn't double down on that.
Yeah. Agreed.
Something I have to notice, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but okay. So the background characters on the original Powerpuff Girls, for the first few seasons when they were traditionally animated, traditionally colored, looked fine. They looked like kind of Flintstones characters, because there's Hanna-Barbera influence, obviously. But, you know, there were some weird designs, but okay, it all looked kind of cohesive. When you get to seasons 5 and 6, dude, there's like 8 different designs on every background. There's a mob, and none of them look anything like each other. And it's so distracting and jarring. I believe there's a character in this episode that is meant to look like the dude from The Big Lebowski. I don't know why.
That wouldn't surprise me because, well, Powerpuff Girls and Big Lebowski has quite a few ties.
But like, I don't know. What do you think? Did you notice this at all?
Yes and no. There are some characters where it's like the hippie girl. She's kind of recurring because she's also from like Save Mojo, and I think she is in See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, like I recognized her, but other than her, I don't know if any of those other characters have been reused, or if they were kind of a one-off design for this episode and this episode alone, or what. But they're like, they don't really have anything in common with each other. They're all just kind of like plastered in there just to fill up space, you know?
Some of them look like they're standing at an angle. And I mean, you might be sitting there thinking like, well, doesn't that make it more interesting? And I mean, in a way it does, but they're background characters that literally just like exist to be a mob. So while they're speaking, I shouldn't be like trying to examine each one of them, trying to see if there's a reference to something, trying to see like why that kid in the back doesn't have a nose, or, you know, whatever. It's because it's Blossom, but no, you know, but like I shouldn't be so much like difference in them that it distracts in the episode, and I think it distracts here, and it's something that maybe it's worse here than everywhere else, but I definitely noticed it in the later seasons. Like it just didn't seem to have. I think maybe they took some designs from the previous seasons and tried to update them while mixing in new character designs that were designed by totally different people. That would be
Yeah.
my guess.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assumption.
So it doesn't look cohesive at all. It doesn't look like any particular style either. I don't know. It's not a huge thing, but I mean, if we're talking about art style, at least we can say the reboots is consistent, right?
Yeah, they do tend to stick with the same background characters for most episodes. So yeah,
There we go.
you can make
Minor
that.
pluses. You gotta take the wins where you can get them.
Exactly. That's the way I look at it.
To other people, this might not bother, but this is just the thing that really kind of like stuck in my craw because this episode doesn't work without it, but it makes no sense. Someone keeps calling the Powerpuff Girls to come down to the situation where they're being robbed, but yet when the Powerpuff Girls get there, all the bank people and everyone are happy, like at the little creatures. Who's calling? Is it the mayor? Who's doing this?
Well, it can't be the mayor because the mayor loves them too, and he gives them a full pardon, so all their crimes are forgiven. And like that's the thing. It's like
no, I'm not wrong though in that like this is just
no,
like
you're not.
Who thought of this? Why? You could have written one guy at the bank that like knows better. Because otherwise, it's literally the town calls the Powerpuff Girls down to yell at them.
All they needed to do was have Miss Bellum appear for a few lines, saying she's the one who's been calling. That's all it would have been. Because Miss Bellum doesn't appear in the episode. So if they just had her in there for a brief moment, just saying, "Hey, girls, I've been," or some way to acknowledge that she's the one doing it. That's all it would have taken. And it's like, okay.
Yes.
And it's the most logical character to be the one who's like pointing it out too. So like that would be a shining moment for her as well. But no, it doesn't really do anything with that. It's just never acknowledged.
Yep. And also I think Miss Bellum would have been, I mean, you made a great point. I think having more characters that are voices of reason in an episode like this, when everyone except for the girls are against them, helps the frustration. It helps keep it down. It having voices of reason, having straight men, it 100% mitigates it. But when you have every character in this episode, does the professor appear in this episode?
Yes, he does, and he's on the side of the critters.
There you go. It just yeah, it's brutal. So going back to the question we asked before, could you see the reboot doing an episode like this? And I mean, how would you think it would do it?
Yeah, so as we had mentioned, this does definitely feel like something that the reboot could kind of play with. I don't know if I feel like the reboot would kind of do something similar, except for the fact that I don't think they would make the cute antagonists necessarily commit crimes. I feel like because for some reason the reboot is so obsessed with school, they would do something along the lines of like a popularity episode where like they're the new kids or whatever. They're the new, center of attention. Gang. Yeah. And they're basically, spreading rumors and lies about the girls, but because they're, so cute or so cool or whatever, they're the ones everyone sides with. Like, I feel like that's how it would translate. And obviously this would make it a little more generic, but considering again the school premise is such a prominent thing in the reboot, that just feels like that's where it would make the most sense the show would do it.
So I have a few things here. First of all, how dare you not mention Painbow?
Shh, I like to pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Oh, okay, of course. But no, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but it's almost
kind of they're brainwashed, but yeah.
Yes. I mean, well, in that way, Painbow. Ooh, get ready for a hot take. In that way, Painbow is better than Sweet and Sour in that at least the characters have justification for acting the way they do.
Oh, snap.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, but Painbow is twerking, so it's automatically worse. I don't care if it's 5 seconds. I don't care. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. Entire franchise ruined.
Yeah.
I'm going to rip my childhood. No. Yeah, I agree that the show probably wouldn't really do this because, and here's the bizarre thing about the show, right? So if you could boil down the Powerpuff Girls, the original show, into two aspects. One, they're cute little girls. You play up the cuteness. You play up the fact that they're little kids, that they play with dolls and, whatever. And two, they fight things. There, it's an action show, so you play on that juxtaposition. The reboot, well, we've spoken about the way they treat action, but I guess I would also say that it tones down the cute. The reboot is not about them being cute little girls, it's about them being strong, empowered women, TM. And I mean, am I wrong? I'm not trying to make any like political message here, but I do think they've toned down the cuteness to try to humanize them, maybe. I don't know, but like I mean, maybe it's just because they're afraid of presenting a message of like patronizing them, but they're like kindergarten age kids. Not just that they've toned down the girls' cuteness, but I think they've kind of toned down the cuteness of everything, period.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the reboot's definitely a softer looking show in terms of its aesthetic, like its backgrounds and its, other characters and stuff.
I don't just mean literally that they look cute. I just mean that they're not really doing kid things anymore. They're doing more like middle school kid
Yeah,
things, I
and
guess.
that's where it gets a little kind of wonky, for lack of a better term, because it's like the show tries to connect to kids, but it's like the one thing that gets me is like the show is all about kids, right? But
Yes.
why do they constantly go to school? Kids despise school. Why do they want to watch a show where superheroes like go to school and not do superhero things?
Because I'm an executive and I don't understand what kids do.
Yeah,
They go to school. Bam, there we go. What are kids into? School.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that's always irked me. It's like I don't want to watch the Powerpuff Girls to watch them go to school. I want to watch the Powerpuff Girls to be powerful and fight bad guys and stuff.
Don't you remember the theme song in the reboot that goes like, Powerpuff Girls go to school?
Oh, well, I don't know which take you listened to, but I must have missed that.
They do their homework before bedtime.
Oh,
Yeah,
joy.
It's time to code, time to read The Old Man and the Sea.
Yay.
Who's got reading comprehension skills?
Is that, oh my gosh, that's who's got the reading comprehension skills? We've got the reading comprehension skills.
Oh god, instead of power it up, it's like the professor's telling them to power down their cellular devices.
Yeah.
Bedtime. All right, so let's move on to our last episode. Oh, this one's a doozy.
Oh boy.
Toast of the Town. So in this episode, the mayor is the mayor is a baby. The mayor is literally a baby, and he wants toast because for whatever reason, like for this one episode, they decide to stay off the pickle thing and instead like toast.
Yeah, which
I don't.
it's
If you're gonna have the character be stupidly obsessed with food, at least make it like consistent. Like why? It's like they couldn't even get that aspect right. Like
no.
I mean, it's a weird thing to complain about in the grand scheme of this episode, but I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, the mayor wants toast, and he wants the professor to fix his toaster because, dude, I don't know. He's a professor. The mayor whines to get him to fix it, and the professor eventually gives in. He tells him, like, go to a repair shop, and then he's like, okay, fine, I'll repair it myself. While he's doing this, the mayor, like, whines about wanting candy. Then the professor puts him in a high chair. I know I'm going like too in depth with this, but I just feel like just saying the mayor acts like a baby, it's giving this too much credit because the mayor acts like a baby in other episodes and it can be funny and it can be like, it's never this bad. It's never this bad. I swear, there's an episode where the mayor goes in a hot air balloon like attacking villains and it's stupid and weird, but it's never this bad.
No.
Oh, and he's talking like a baby too. He lost the ability to use full sentences inexplicably, and he gets into the chemical X, which, man, I didn't know the professor had such an extensive supply of it.
Yeah, I never realized he had it in the powdered form either.
Well, you see, they're the powdered Puff Girl. No,
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yes, but the mayor thinks that it's like hair growth serum. And for some reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Chemical X in the series, I mean, it does a lot of things, but usually it makes you grow into just like a wild, unstable, crazy monster.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give you hair and make you act like you normally would, but giant.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess it does for Donnie, but
yeah.
Oh,
well.
crud! Oh no! Oh no!
Oh dear.
So anyway, the mayor, like, here's the thing. You think it would be about the mayor turning into a monster and rampaging in the city. And it technically is, but the mayor is in full control of himself. It's just that the mayor is just that stupid and babyish in this episode that apparently him grabbing Miss Bellum and playing King Kong is treated as if this is just like a normal thing that the mayor does. Like, I can't even finish like the description of this episode. It's just
he's so out of character,
yeah.
which is weird because, you know, yeah, the mayor's ignorant and like he has his shining moments, but overall he's typically
Is that a ball joke?
Oh, you caught that. Okay.
Eh.
Yeah. I did do that on purpose. But yeah, he's pretty ignorant. He's never acted like a spoiled toddler. Like, yeah, he relies on Miss Bellum, and yeah, he can't run the city without her, and things like that, but it's never to the extent of pestering the professor over and over again, repeating the same general statement, maybe changing like the word toast to candy or whatever. And like, I don't know if like the episode was intending for this repetition to be funny, but like you can only say a joke so many times before it loses its humor, and like it's so repetitive in this episode that the humor is gone before the joke's even said once.
Here's the thing. The mayor, when written correctly, in my interpretation, he's a bumbling old man that's like kind of senile and kind of childish. That's how you write him. He is literally a toddler, like a real life toddler, not a fictional toddler, right? We're not talking like, you know, Tommy Pickles here. We're talking about just he repeats the same phrase over and over and over again. He is just I don't know. It's not even just that he's acting like a baby. Like, yes, it's out of character and extreme, but he's had moments where he's like this before, but like he is so frustratingly one note in this episode that there's just no way to there's no way anyone could like this. I mean, look, you're entitled to your opinion if you do like this. I 100% preface this, but I would really love to hear an argument for how this is not like just one of the most objectively worst episodes of the show, of any show.
Yeah.
any good show, I guess. Any good show.
I feel like I'd be hard pressed to find anyone who would laugh at this. I don't think kids would. I know adults probably wouldn't. Like it's I mean, maybe there's that one person out there that like disproves me, but and the thing is like there's no explanation for the mayor acting this way either. Like the least they could have done is the very beginning of the episode have the professor accidentally zap him or something with some kind of like mental regressing ray that kind of turns his mind into that of a child or something.
Well, let me fix this episode. Okay, ready? Here, it's easy.
Okay.
He goes to the professor in his lab. The professor says he'll fix the toaster, but the mayor is kind of annoying. He wants to know what's up in the lab. Okay, I mean they do the joke. I didn't remember this, but there's a joke in this. It's not even funny. It's just more like, oh, they did it. He's Dee Dee. He says, "Ooh, what does this button do?" And he presses the button.
Yep.
Explosion.
Dexter's Lab reference. Yep.
You just have him be annoying. You just have him be curious. Okay, he doesn't play with the chemical X. Just through some mishap, and then when he's a monster, he becomes infantile. It's justified because Chemical X does weird things in the show. We know this.
Yep.
That's the justification. But you cannot just have him be this dumb. I mean, even if he just said like Miss Bellum is out of town for a week, that wouldn't be like the best thing in the world. But like at least it's a reason.
Yeah. I'll take something over nothing.
Comparing this to the reboot. Okay. The reboot is not this bad. It's not this bad, not this annoying, but the professor gets this treatment in the reboot in every episode. Yeah. Every one that I've seen. I have not seen a single episode where the professor doesn't say something stupid.
There's only two that I can think of. Fashion Forward and The Big Sleep. They're the only two episodes the professor's in that I can really defend him.
He's absolutely useless all the time. Absolutely useless. And that's at best. At best is he does nothing. Like, that's the best you could hope from a character, that he shows up and says one line and gets out of the episode. And that's sad. Comparing it also to the reboot, one of the things about this episode is Miss Bellum is in it. She gets grabbed by the mayor. She plays the damsel in distress. She does nothing. I mean, usually she's the one to calm the mayor down. You'd think that's where this episode's going, but it's not even that clever. It's literally they make toast for him because that's what he's been whining about the whole episode. Good job. I didn't know how this problem was going to be solved, but you managed to just make it be the thing we were all expecting, I guess. I feel like not having Miss Bellum around makes the mayor a pointless, dumb, annoying character. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, at best, pointless, or just like why. But yeah, I feel like Miss Bellum, like in the previous episode, having Miss Bellum in it more could 100% help. And I mean, I will say it's pretty creepy how she basically treats him like a child. They have a weird thing going in the 2 lines that Miss Bellum does get. But at least maybe that would have, I don't know, been something. Dude, I don't know. I mean, it's at the point where I take like a creepy, like, mommy-child relationship between the mayor and Miss Bellum than what we actually get in the episode. Dude, I don't know.
That'd be a very, very interesting episode. I'm not gonna lie. I think I am not sure how I would handle that, but considering the other adult things this show has done before, I wouldn't put it past it.
Yeah.
No, there's only one other point that I really want to mention, and there's this one is kind of a throwaway moment because it really doesn't impact anything in the grand scheme of things, but there's this part where the girls are finally, they show up, they see the mayor is on top of a building with Miss Bellum, and they kind of ask the mayor, like, why is he doing what he is? And he says he wants toast. The professor wouldn't fix his toaster. And they look at the professor and they say, like, professor, and he kind of like gives this like, excuse of sorts. And it's like, well, time out. Okay, that's not fair to the professor at all, because anyone who watches the episode will notice it's like he agrees to work on the toaster, right? And then the mayor gets into trouble with the chemical X, grows to humongous size, and then runs off. The professor doesn't have time to fix the toaster anymore because he has to go into town after the mayor to make sure he doesn't do anything too drastically dangerous. He doesn't have time to fix the toaster. They can't blame the professor for not fixing the toaster when he has these other more important problems to deal with. And it's like, and this is a comparison that I can easily draw to the reboot, because this sort of thing happens a lot where characters are unjustifiably blamed for the wrong reasons or for something they didn't do. The most obvious comparison, and this is my least favorite episode in the entire series, is Once Upon a Townsville. I cannot stand this episode because it completely puts the blame on the girls for all the wrong reasons. But that'll take a whole 30 minutes for me to get into, so I'll just leave it at that. And like the episode Halt and Catch Silico with the mob mentality earlier, where the girls are blamed for something they didn't do, it's present there. This is like, out of everything in this episode, like the most one-to-one comparison that I can make besides the mayor professor character dynamic is this: the blame being irresponsibly put on the wrong character when it's unjustified.
Yep, and you'll find that a lot when you have stupid characters, because you see, if you're stupid, you can get away with anything.
Yeah,
anything. Clearly. And that's just, I mean, people are sick of that. As someone who very frequently covers a show with a character who the writers seem to think that stupid is also means like able to do things with ill intent or just like be completely 100% irresponsible, and it's still not their fault somehow. It's the hero's fault. And by the way, speaking of heroes, the Powerpuff Girls, like, they're in this episode, but they don't do anything. You would think, like, you're hearing this episode and you're thinking, okay, well, how are they going to get the mayor better? And you said toast, but what does that have? See, they just have Antidote X lying around. Antidote X, if I'm remembering correctly, seemed to be something that maybe like is more important than just something that they just kind of have lying around. Like, it feels like a plot device that like should be more important. Like,
yeah, Antidote X, it's only brought up like very, very sparingly in the show. It's not nearly as prominent as Chemical X, and you'd think they would treat it with more, like care.
Just throw it on the sandwich, whatever. Like, it's like, I mean, oh, and if you're thinking the mayor somehow gets like reprimanded for all this,
no. The only thing that happens is he gets shrunk back down to normal size, and then the girls leave him on top of a building.
Oh yeah, there's that. But it's
But
just
then
like
he goes back to complaining. So it's like, what's the point? You know?
yes. It's I mean it's a real doozy.
And now you know exactly why I named this episode as one of the worst.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, Say Uncle was the one that came to my mind, but honestly, I don't know that I've even ever seen this episode, to be completely honest with you, before this.
Hmm.
Um
It's
oh, it's
rough.
really boggling when you take a show that was just as clever as it was. And I mean, look, I would take, and I haven't seen all of them, but I would take pretty much any episode of the reboot over this, because say whatever you want about the reboot, but
Hmm.
for the on the whole, it's more boring than anything else. It's not it's got some really stupid moments in it, and yeah, the professor. I mean, I'd argue that it's probably worse in this. It is definitely worse in the series overall to have a character that has just consistently been dumbed down rather than one really, really, really dumbed down example. But I would rather watch any episode of the reboot over this. I'd rather watch the Donnie episode, which I guess this episode has more in common with than I thought.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah.
I do not think that they would do this in the reboot for the simple fact of the reboot is very much Powerpuff Girls focused. They, as far as I know, they have not done. They don't focus on any other character, right?
Season 2, there have been some Mojo episodes, but other than
Ah,
him, that's about it.
Mojo, right? They wouldn't make the professor the protagonist
No.
for the simple fact that he's too stupid to do that. And in a way, the mayor is the protagonist of this episode. The professor is kind of like the guiding force against him, but we follow the mayor.
Yeah.
You made the most annoying, obnoxious character the focus. It's not like he's in the episode. It's not like he's the main conflict. What he is literally the focus of the episode.
Yeah, everything revolves around him. Because like every there there's only like one moment in the entire episode where the mayor is not on screen, and it's right after he runs out of the room, and the girls fly in and say to the professor, what's going on? And then they
Yep.
immediately cut back to the mayor. Like the mayor is always the center of attention, except for that one very short conversation.
I kind of also love just how understated it all is. Like they don't even sound that surprised that this
No,
happened.
no,
Like
it's a regular thing apparently, even though it's
I
not,
mean,
because we've never seen the mayor do this before. Not to this extent, anyways.
the mayor has been the antagonist of at least one other episode, but oh boy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess the Donnie episode would be like the closest equivalent in terms of the PPG boot, and it's just
Mhm.
as well that that's one of the most hated.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So I guess in conclusion, I mean, the point of this was never to like say that like the reboot somehow like picked up on the worst aspects and like ran with it. It's more just kind of we just wanted to see what did compare. And I mean I do think that it is very I would confidently say that there are definitely episodes of the Powerpuff Girls original show that are worse than even some of the worst episodes of the reboot.
Yeah, I would say for this episode specifically, yeah, I like as messed up as Once Upon. I mean, oh gosh, I really don't like Once Upon. I don't know if I'd go so far to say it's worse than Once Upon a Townsville, because I just really don't like that episode.
And I haven't seen that, to
But
be completely fair with all of you. So but other than that, is that an outlier, or would you say there's any other episodes that kind of come
Once Upon a
in comparison?
Townsville is an outlier, yes. And then like the second worst episode would be Snow Month, which is bad
I've
for
seen your review on that.
yeah, it's bad for different reasons. Yeah,
I
okay.
don't know.
I don't know if I'd say any episode of the reboot, but definitely almost all of them I would rather watch the reboot over this. There's like those couple of exceptions. But
Yeah.
I've gone into those way more times than I ever needed to.
And I mean that's the thing. It's just like the reboot, and I will say 100%, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but I will say from what I've seen, season 3 is an improvement. It's a pretty decent improvement. I wouldn't say that the show ever made me laugh. I wouldn't say that I would intentionally ever seek any of these episodes out, or I've never watched them again, to be honest. I never want to, but there was a little more action. There was a little bit more interesting dynamics going on, like the Powerpuff Girls interacting with Mojo. There's the Triplicate, or whatever her name is, Duplicate. Seemed like a somewhat interesting villain that appeared for more than like 2 seconds. So I will give the show credit that it definitely is improving, but I will say that, like, the thing is, and I've learned this, is just that when you it's like the best shows that make the worst episodes, because it's the best shows that have bold writers that are willing to take chances. And
Hmm.
I would never say that anything in Toast of the Town is anything close to like a good experiment or an experiment gone right. It's not even like an experimental episode, but you end up with this when you try to make episodes like See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, or Meet the Beat Alls. You don't end up with episodes like this generally when you make a show like the Powerpuff Girls reboot, where, I mean, a lot of it is middling. A lot of it is oh, okay, that exists. It's not a lot of things that make me want to, just strongly speak against the reboot. It's just a lot of like, okay, well, why does this exist? And I don't know if you'd agree with me on that conclusion, but I think that's why we ended up with some of these episodes, is just because the writers were trying to do something. They're bold and they're doing different things, and that leads to some really, really bad episodes that should not be called good just because they tried something different or just because the show is good other times. But I do think it's important to know when when a show is trying and completely botches it up, versus I really just don't think the Powerpuff Girls reboot is trying.
Yeah, I pretty much share the same exact thoughts as you, because there's a lot of instances where the reboot, eh, it's like, I don't know. When it comes to the overall quality of the reboot, it has its, diamonds in the rough. There's a lot of just kind of like, it's mediocre. It's it can be generic at times. It doesn't really scream Powerpuff Girls the same way that these three episodes don't really scream Powerpuff Girls. None of them signify necessarily that it is the Powerpuff Girls and not any other cartoon.
None of the 3 episodes actually include any fighting.
Exactly.
Not a single one.
Not a single one. And none of them have any like defining character moments for the girls or otherwise. Because it's like, I could totally see, say, Uncle being done with most other slice of life shows. I could see
Yes.
Sweet and Sour being done. I could even see Toast of the Town being done. Now, I certainly hope no one actually does Toast of the Town, but I could see it being done.
Yeah, I mean, Toast of the Town in concept, making a character become a monster or whatever is, I mean, that's like a standard trope. It's more just to the length at which they make him.
As
Yeah.
long as the character's not doing the annoying Mayor want toast for 11 minutes.
Oh, you didn't have the good candies in here.
Yeah. He wants cherry flavor, apparently. Oh, dear. But yeah, that about sums it up for me.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here. If you haven't checked out Shadow Streak's channel, I do highly recommend it. He has the monumentous task of turning a show that is largely pretty boring into an interesting review series. And if you want someone who really puts their money where their mouth is and isn't just here to like cash in on the Powerpuff Girls reboot was a hot topic, and someone that's actually seeing it through. I don't know if I want to say see it through to the end, because I don't want to commit you that much to it. But if you want to see someone that does give like an episode by episode breakdown, Shadow does a pretty amazing job.
Thank you.
And if you want to get a good feel of kind of what the show is like on an episode to episode basis, without actually sitting down and watching it, Shadow does a really good job at kind of giving you the feeling and the idea of it, because yeah, you save so much time.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of my goal, because I know a lot of people who watch my reviews don't watch the show, so I kind of cater to those people by going in depth about what happens and kind of setting the scene.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear if anyone has any other suggestions in terms of just like what the worst episodes of the original show are. All right, bye, guy rules.